Governor Romney, the presidential nominee now officially. Good to see you, sir. Welcome back to New Hampshire.
Thanks, Carl. Good to be with you again.
Well, so the Democratic convention is underway, and we've just discovered that they have removed from their platform any mention of God. What does that say to you about the opposing party?
Well, you know, our founding document, the Declaration of Independence, references God. Our national motto, "In God We Trust." I mean, this is part of our heritage, and I think they're having removed purposefully God from their platform. Suggests a party which is increasingly out of touch with the mainstream of American people. I think this party is veering further and further away into an extreme wing that Americans don't recognize.
Do you see it as part of the so-called war on religion?
I see it as being out of touch and detached and simply so far removed from the interests and concerns of the American people that people look at this party and look at President Obama and his leadership and see someone who's taking us in a direction which they don't recognize.
During your convention, Republicans ran a debt clock. During the Democrats' convention, or actually just an hour or so before it started, that debt clock went to $16 trillion. What does that say about the current state of affairs for this country?
Well, there are two numbers you're not going to hear in the Democrat convention. You certainly haven't heard them yet. One is 16 for the $16 trillion of debt which we've now amassed. And the president came in, there was 10 trillion. All the prior presidents combined had amassed 10 trillion. He's now added 6 to that, 16 trillion, an unthinkable number. The other number you won't hear is the number of 47. 47 million people have now been reported to be on food stamps. When the president came in, there were 33 million. It's 32 actually. That's a $15 million person increase. That's more than the population of Ohio have been added to the rolls of food stamps. This president's policies have simply not worked, either from a debt standpoint or from the standpoint of helping those that are falling from the middle class into poverty.
And yet, the Obama for America senior staff is arguing that people are absolutely better off than they were 4 years ago.
You know, no one in the convention so far has had the temerity to say that people are better off in America because they realize it's not the case. The convention so far is a celebration of failure. They're just not acknowledging that you have now 47 million people on food stamps, a record 50% higher than when the president took office, $16 trillion in debt, 1 out of 6 Americans now living in poverty, our schools not keeping up with international standards. The median income in America has dropped $4,000 under this president, even as prices have gone up. This has been a very difficult 4 years. And they're doing their best to celebrate something, but it's a celebration of failure.
They certainly didn't mention things being better off, at least last night, than 4 years ago. But Democrats say that, well, you didn't mention the troops and didn't mention things overseas related to U.S. military efforts. First time in 52 years they say that that's happened. How come that happened?
I actually went to the American Legion the day before my speech. Both the president and I were invited. I actually left the convention, went to the American Legion, and there talked about our troops, talked about our commitment to the military, and talked about our commitment to our veterans. So I had an opportunity to speak at great length about the sacrifice of our troops. And by the way, in my speech, I also spoke about our military and my commitment not to shrink our military and how different that is from the decision of the president to slash our military by $1 trillion over this decade.
There seems to be a difference, too, again referring to the Democratic National Committee's platform, on Jerusalem. They had in 2008 Jerusalem as the perceived capital of Israel. That's been removed from their platform. And you've said that that was a shameful illustration of the president throwing Israel under the bus. Comment a little bit on that, if you would.
Well, when the president ran in 2008, he said that Jerusalem was the capital of Israel. That was his posture at that point. That's also been the posture in the Democratic platform. The president and his party have now changed their position. They now say that they're not certain what the capital of Israel might be. I find that one more example of Israel being thrown under the bus by the president. I think it's a very sad day when we have our best friend in the Middle East, a nation which shares our values, a nation now under extraordinary threat and distress when nations around it, like Syria and Egypt, are going through tumult of their own. For us at a stage like this, to take an action of that nature, to cease calling Jerusalem the capital of Israel. This is a very troubling development, and I think one which will be recognized for what it is by people across America and across the world.
Now, the administration would argue that the status of Jerusalem is a final status discussion, something that had to be a secondary part of the negotiation of a final two-state settlement. And that by taking a position as a government or even as a candidate prior to the final status talks, you're essentially undermining the possibility of a deal.
Well, candidate Obama said that Jerusalem was the capital of Israel when he ran 4 years ago. The platform of the Democratic Party said that Jerusalem was the capital of Israel 4 years ago. They've now changed that posture. Doing so sends a very dramatic signal to the people in Israel and to the people around them, and suggests once again that the United States of America is distancing itself from our close relationship with Israel. At a time like this, you show solidarity with your ally. You show distance with those that are against your ally. This president's doing just the opposite. And it makes it more difficult for Israel to sit down with the Palestinians and for the Palestinians to feel they've got to sit down if they're going to see ultimately the kind of two-state solution that I support.
This president's predecessor, Democratic predecessor, Bill Clinton, speaks tonight. He has on occasion said some kind things about you. Tonight it's expected that he'll be a little bit less kind and probably take you to task on the assertion that President Obama has gutted welfare by his Health and Human Services Directive Memorandum to make available waivers. You want to pre-act to that?
Well, I'm not sure exactly what President Clinton will say, but there's no question but that President Obama's decision to say that we're going to allow waivers or excuses from work requirements in welfare was designed to shore up part of his base that may not be inclined to go out and vote in the same kind of energy and passion as they did 4 years ago. And I think putting in a measure that would take work out of welfare and waiving the work requirement in welfare is an extraordinary political move on his part, and one which I disagree with. My own view is that we should have greater work requirements with welfare, not less. When I was governor of my state, I moved more than once to increase our work requirements because I happen to believe that work is dignified, that it's uplifting, and that we should not encourage a permanent lifestyle of living on welfare.
It's been suggested by some in the press that the president, in offering up dispensation for the sons and daughters of illegal immigrants who've grown up here essentially from a young time, the president gave them a little bit of a nod and a benefit to court them, that his assertion that he now supports gay marriage was all about sort of putting together coalitions on the liberal left that will re-elect him. If you view that portion of the president's change, do you think that those two were just political opportunities to put his base together?
I think there's no question but that a great deal of what the president has done in the last several months has been designed to shore up his base. It's political in nature as opposed to policy. Look, when he ran for office, he said in his first year, his highest priority would be immigration reform. And yet in his first year and second year, with a Democrat House and Democrat Senate, he did nothing. No, he waited until a few months before the election and then took a move which, of course, is temporary in nature. It's not law. It's just an executive order. And it's political in its motive, and it's unfortunate that so many people will not understand what their permanent condition will be.
So if he doesn't get an I for incomplete, what grade do you give him?
Well, you know, incomplete usually means that you got to go back and take the course again. I don't think the American people want to see this president get another 4 years. The last 4 years have not been good for the middle class in America. There's no question but that his policies have led to more people falling out of the middle class into poverty, more people in poverty, 1 out of 6, a record number of people on food stamps, 47 million. This has not been a good time for the American people. Anyone that wants to let him try it again, I think, would be making a big mistake. Those who think that they're better off than they were 4 years ago, they may decide to vote for him. But the great majority of Americans who recognize we're not better off than we were 4 years ago recognize that his policies are not what is needed to get the middle class growing with more take-home pay and more jobs.
All right, so this is a softball. Be candid, be honest. How would you grade your own campaign, and what do you wish you did differently?
Oh, I don't think a lot about looking in the rearview mirror. I look forward. We've got 2 months to go. We're preparing for debates. We're raising the money we need to be on the air. I've got a great running mate. We're going to be working nonstop to take our message to the American people. And it's a message of showing up and strengthening the middle class of America by reinstalling the principles that made America the powerhouse economically we've always been, and pointing out that the president's policies have failed us. I don't think it's because he wanted to fail the American people. I think the president just doesn't know which direction to pull.
You mentioned debate preparation. Have you picked up any pointers from Rob Portman?
All I know is that I'm glad I don't have to debate Rob Portman.
Well, I assume you thought Ann's speech was a little bit better than Michelle Obama's speech.
I didn't hear Michelle Obama's speech, but I sure heard Ann's.
So you didn't watch?
No, I was.
Aren't you curious about the opposition or the opposition's spouse?
You know, I'm focused on taking my message to the American people, and the words that will come from the Obama campaign may be delightful and delicious and diversionary, but they cannot paper over the record of the last 4 years. The American people know that things are tougher for them. They've seen incomes go down by $4,000 a family, even as gas prices have doubled, electric rates are up, food prices are up, health insurance costs have gone up by $2,500 a family. People in this country are having hard times, and no amount of beautiful words is going to be able to cover up for what has been a record of disappointment.
I know I'm going to get the hook. One quick question about GM. The bailout, it turns out, cost GM $21 billion more of taxpayer dollars. This was something that you opposed, but Democrats like to say you occasionally try to take credit for it. What does it mean that the GM portion of this is costing more in terms of the general success or failure? What's your current assessment of the auto bailout?
Well, my view from the very beginning was that the auto companies needed to go through a managed bankruptcy. And ultimately, that's what the president did. He finally took them through a managed bankruptcy. But it took him 6 months to get there. And during that 6 months, they spent, well, about $20 billion that didn't need to be spent. I think they should have moved more quickly to a managed bankruptcy. I'm glad they went through that process and they've come out. And the support they got after bankruptcy, I think, was appropriate to give them the ability to get back on their feet. But the extra $20 billion they lost, that was a mistake.
Governor Romney, thank you very much, sir.
Thanks,
the
Carl.
nominated Governor Romney.
Thank you.